Now, on Enough Said, with KFAN Radio's Dan Barrero.
Why now? Why again? Will you please explain it to me? Because it's been talked and debated to death.
Attorney and HoldingCourtPodcast.com's Ron Rosenbaum.
You need to stand up against extremism.
Right.
What do they want them to do?
Well,
you don't know the power you had. You've ruined it for all of us.
What are you talking
You're not
about?
even from here.
Well,
Enough Said.
All rise.
You're going to say this case is all about race?
Yes, because it is.
OJ Simpson.
I've heard of him.
I'm in the minority, I'm going to guess on this. But I'm sick of this story. For the last 20, how long has it been? 20 years?
20 years.
And for 20 years, most of us who were old enough to remember the case and pay attention to it, digested it, debated it, read books about it, endless theories about it. And so I may be one of the 5 people who've not gotten into this whole concept of why now, why again? Will you please explain it to me? Because it's been talked and debated to death.
First of all, you're not one of 5. You're one of 1. You're the only person in the entire United States.
Plus, it's cheesy.
Dan, you got sex, you got murder, you got the Kardashians, you got celebrity,
Class.
you got Hollywood, you got race fighting, you got everything in this. There'll never be another case that has these elements. They'll be watching this thing in 100 years. Dan, how can you this is better than made up fiction,
But
for God's sake.
What's new about it? What is it? Are we getting some new angle on it? You've watched it so far. I have. So is there some new angle? The one place I get is for kids who were, 5 years old at the time and weren't really paying attention to it, the chase, even though the rest of the country was probably as fascinated by that story as any in pop culture history. Okay, I can see they're going, well, I didn't really understand it. For that generation, I get it. For my generation, I'm exhausted by it, and I don't have anything left to say about it, even though, as you say, I know the stuff that we're dealing with here to this day is important. The polarization of the races, how the two races look at trials and outcomes, etc. I get, but my God, what's left to say? Did they find the murderer? Is that what it is? Did they find the real killer?
Can't find him. He's in jail, for God's
true.
sake. He looked in every golf course in the country, didn't find him. Now they've taken him away. But listen, it was the perfect confluence set against the riots in L.A. Plus, you can look for 100 years and wonder how that jury could have come back, literally, like in a very short period of time. Dan, the trial lasted 7 months. You think the jury would have been out more than a couple of hours, but it was set against the backdrop of race.
People are
interested. Just had all the elements.
People are interested in this case. Take a look at this graphic. More than 5 million people tuned in to watch the first episode on Tuesday night. Most popular among 18 to 49-year-olds. We're talking about people who weren't even born yet. When this case was playing out, it's really bridging generations, and we're hooked all over again. And as you mentioned, that Kardashian factor doesn't hurt it either.
Oh, there you go. See, that's what I'm the cynic. I think a lot of this has to do, the Kardashians, they're involved in this. And of course,
by the way,
what was the name of the dog?
5
years old at that point?
The dog was, by the way, when is the last time you saw a murder case where the only eyewitness is a dog?
That's true.
Okay, that was one more relevant. But one of the really important things, a lot of
Akita,
people,
I think it was.
that was the name of the
yeah,
dog.
see, that's how much I still
Kind of
remember.
dog.
Yeah.
One of the really important things, a lot of people hated Johnny Cochran. But I'll tell you one thing. Johnny Cochran did what a defense attorney is supposed to do. He looked around and decided, the way I can win this case, where the evidence, nobody thought OJ could win because he was guilty, but he made it a race case.
You think he was guilty?
Well,
I think he was.
It appears
but again,
there's a possibility.
Well, here,
by the way,
this
a lot of people don't think he's guilty.
That's true. Although not as many as did at the time. I will throw this out, though. Can you imagine that case in real time in this day and age of Twitter, Facebook, Insta, cable news outlets, all over the place? I mean, I think I think North America probably would have exploded.
It would wipe Donald Trump off the television, and that's not easy to do,
it's
by
almost
the way.
impossible to do.
And let's put a tweet up from an Enough Said viewer. It says, "We are fascinated because you just couldn't escape the coverage at the time."
Yeah, but that doesn't explain the generation today.
No.
I just think it's got all the elements in an incredible trial that comes
The
up with
acting
a
any
verdict
good?
which went completely against How many people do you know that thought OJ was going to be acquitted? Remember, acquittal's got to be a unanimous jury.
Not that many that I saw. In fact, I could still remember sitting in my living room and listening to the verdict and going, that's basically it. My jaw dropped. And then we saw, as an example of, to this day, you could argue where we are from a race standpoint, some shots of groups of African-American students cheering that said verdict outside the courtroom, courthouse, same deal. And to that extent, it is great foreshadowing to where we still are today.
We are not just as bad in terms of race relations, in terms of the way really white people and black people see police in their community.
And the justice system.
And that's why I think for a lot of black people, they found it perfectly believable that Mark Fuhrman had planted the evidence. Where white people say, that's just impossible. Plus, it was the dawn of DNA. A lot of things were different then. But I think the Kennedy assassination, it's one of those stories that's never going to die.
Go away. Yeah,
okay, enough said on that one. Let's move on to Bill Cosby. A judge this week refused to throw out a sexual assault case against him. Cosby's team claiming that years ago he wouldn't face criminal charges if he gave a deposition in a civil suit. This case will go to trial now. Cosby, he's 78 years old, frail, has vision problems, needs help even walking into the courtroom. What do we do with them? What do you do with them, Ron?
Well, I mean, it goes to the issue, Dan, at least before we get into the details of the Cosby case, what is the point of locking people up? You know, for a lot of people say we're trying to rehabilitate people. We're not trying to rehabilitate people. It is strictly about punishment. Why, to me, if Cosby is found guilty in a court of law, considering what he's charged with and considering all the cases that he never got charged with, but he could have been charged with, but for the statute of limitations, I'd send him to prison.
I don't care. I'm with you.
I don't care if he's 78.
He could be 105 years old. There's supposed to be an accountability issue, and it's not just about rehab. So I don't even understand that particular argument. I'm as fascinated with where this indeed, might go, in that in the case involved here, is it cut and dried? I mean, we've talked about, you and I have talked about how Cosby, in a deposition, I believe, testified to, well, his deal was, well, the women I was with kind of wanted the edge taken off.
I just happen to have Quaaludes to help him take the edge
off. And Benadryl
off.
To where, okay, but that could mean you're incapacitated, at which point you're in a very different category than, take the edge off and get a little bit into the mood. It's scary stuff to me, and I guess that still remains to be seen whether that will be allowed in. But it certainly is the smoking gun to a lot of us have pointed to, said, man, this is some pretty significant and serious stuff.
Well, there was that big phony fight about whether he was promised immunity, whatever.
Right.
If you're going to get immunity, Dan, it's best to put it in writing.
From a judge, right?
Well, a judge would be immunity. This was theoretically a promise by a district attorney, but there's no record. The judge says, don't give me that. But if his deposition goes in, I think it's not just a he said, she said. It's a he said and she said, basically the same thing. I think it's a very tough case for Cosby if that deposition goes in, and I think it will go in.
Defense attorneys, I've heard a couple of them say, does the woman involved here, the alleged victim, have any vulnerability because she had 2 other previous encounters with him, one of them that she didn't like, and then why is she with him again? Would that hurt her case?
Yeah, it doesn't help her case, but I think because of what he said in the deposition, I think it's a pretty good case for the government.
You want to congratulate the attorney who advised him to testify with that sort of information.
I am mystified that any attorney ever did that.
Coming up on Enough Said.
The owners don't trust the beauty of a beautiful game. How sad is that?
Well, they may be right, Dan. I know you're one of those.
Too often, people conflating the horrific acts of terrorism with the beliefs of an entire faith. And of course, recently we've heard inexcusable political rhetoric against Muslim Americans.
I think that we can go to lots of places. Right now, I don't know if maybe he feels comfortable there. We have a lot of problems in this country, Greta. There are a lot of places he can go, and he chose a mosque.
You know, this is exactly what we said before about politics being a zero-sum game in this country. Obama goes to a mosque, in my opinion, really representing the highest traditions of fairness and religious freedom and tolerance. And Rubio says Trump rips him, and then Rubio says you're separating,
divisive.
You're being divisive in the country.
Yeah.
Has anybody ever said that if he went to a prayer breakfast and gave a speech? This to me, and by the way, he warned Muslims, you need to stand up against extremism.
Right.
What do they want him to do?
Well, this should not be controversial, but it is, and it's sad because, as you said, first of all, the president has spoken in churches, spoken in lots of places.
Well, is that being divisive?
And as you point out, on at least 2 major occasions, once in speaking in Turkey and once at the United Nations, laid out exactly what you said. Say, hey, look, I don't want the conflating, to use the term he did most recently, to be overdone, but the Muslim community does have some hard questions it needs to ask itself about pushing back
which Obama
against some
raised,
of these churches.
though.
And that's my point. He's done that a couple of times. And so we're back to, we're not going to emphasize that. Why? Because it does not serve our purposes. The one place I'll push back a little bit on the president is, I think for a lot of individuals, it would be far easier to fully accept his message if, for example, on the occasion of Fort Hood, the administration had not seemed to just bend over backwards to not call this for what it is. That was not workplace violence in, I would say, the conventional, traditional sense. Right. And if some people are going to basically blame all Muslims for that, that group is going to do that anyway. Call it as you see it. Don't be afraid. That's been part of Bill Maher's complaint, and I think it's a very legitimate complaint about many liberals, that there's this fear of basically calling it like you see it.
Well, I totally agree with that he is vulnerable to that criticism. But I think in this country, if a leader, well, by the way, why didn't we hear this when George Bush, right after 9/11, went to a mosque and said, it's not about you, it's about extremists? Why wasn't there any criticism?
Well, in fact,
I didn't hear any criticism from anybody.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there, you guys. Enough said about that one. Let's talk about the rise of NHL All-Star Game MVP John Scott. The game over and done with, but he is a fan favorite, that's for sure. He's still in the spotlight. It's the feel-good story of the week that everybody's talking about, right, Dan?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's just great.
Can't make this one up.
Let's celebrate a guy who, I think he's been suspended 3 times. Once for sucker punching somebody, a guy who isn't even a real player.
He's a goon.
He's basically a goon. Yeah, I was trying to avoid the word, but you're right. He's a goon. And because, for whatever reason, somebody thought it'd be cute. Let's see if we can get him in the NHL All-Star Game. And everybody got into it. And the NHL helped to turn him into a martyr because they started balking, even though they had this voting system in place. And suddenly, the NHL's the bad guy, and this guy's wonderful. The same guy that, up until now, we're looking at, is this really the direction you want the league to go in? So I'm, again, like on, I guess, the OJ thing, I'm the one guy who doesn't think he's worth being elevated to a folk hero. When baseball's All-Star Game voting came in and every Kansas City Royal was going to be in, were people celebrating that? They were going, that's a travesty. They're mocking the system. It's ridiculous. But for some reason, this guy's getting a pass because some people thought, oh, what a cool story.
Well, I think some of the reason he's getting a pass is the league handled it. The hypocrisy of this league is almost unimaginable. This is the guy you keep in the back room, and then you let him out for a shift. What does he have, like 5 goals in 4,000 games?
Basically that, and he got 2 in the All-Star game.
He got 2 in the All-Star game in the 3-on-3. But basically, the league, we hate violence, except we don't really hate violence. We actually like, and we don't like to publicize these guys. And I think in some ways, I applaud the public for sticking their finger in the eye of the NHL. And nobody ever imagined he was going to become. Right. Didn't they try to get rid of him so he couldn't be eligible? That he went to like a minor
they put him in the minor
team?
leagues.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
I'm surprised they didn't like hold him hostage somewhere and put him on an island.
But you really can't.
The league is not. You're right.
Okay.
You got me
so
there.
who's
the
a
league,
good guy in this
That's
story?
what I'm saying. I would say I can't root for either. Right. Some people want to make it on the league. I'm saying this guy. Check his record. There's nothing special. He wrote a piece for Players Tribune that people thought was very thoughtful and sympathetic. And because he said, the league stupidly came to him and said, you really want to have to explain this to your daughters somewhere down the road?
Right.
You know,
Well,
and it's like, that's not a smart way to go about it.
Don't they open it up when they let the fans decide? It's the same thing with
that's
the
the business.
Do you guys know that they're approaching him for a movie now? They're thinking about making a movie about his life now.
Oh, good. Well,
maybe Chris Pratt, Jason Sudeikis, names being thrown out.
Yeah. Well, this is the league. You know, we just had a player cross-check a ref, a linesman, for God's sake. I think he got a legitimate suspension, but of course he's claiming he was too groggy. He didn't even know what he was doing.
Did you watch the video?
That's hockey. It's ridiculous.
But you got to admit, if they wanted to stop, you're not going to see this in other sports. If they really wanted to stop it, they wouldn't make a 2-minute, a 5-minute, a 10-minute penalty. They'd throw them out of the league. But listen, they know as well as everybody else does.
They don't want it.
Watch the fans. What's the most exciting moment in an NHL game when people get up and the players are knocking their sticks on the side? I'm sorry. It draws fans, and they know it, so they play it both ways.
The owners don't trust the beauty of a beautiful game. How sad is that?
Well, they may be right, Dan. I know you're one of those
I'm
lily-livered
I'm
wimps.
a peacenik.
Coming up on Enough Said.
They want to make it safer from blood-sucking attorneys like you who are going to take full advantage of this. That's why they're doing it. And now no one's going to be able to see the ball. I can't help but chuckle at the Super Bowl 50 hype the week leading up to it.
Has there been any hype?
Well, here's what's funny about seeing that clip. There was a time, and Fran Tarkenton, in fact, tweeted out a photo of himself, one of the 3 Super Bowls he lost, which I know is still painful to you. I think there are, Super Bowl week, there are 5 reporters, he's on a lawn chair, I think, and there's like 5 reporters right on top of him. That's what it was then. This is how it's become now, and I'll give you one stat that you might like. In 1973, which was the year Hunter Thompson, the Gonzo reporter, did his Fear and Loathing at the Super Bowl report, it was, I think players got 15,000, winning players, championship team. And now it's $97,000 per player, or close to 100. Back then, it was $88,000 for a 30-second ad. Today, it's $4.5 million. You think then that's why they call this a players' league. You notice how one has gone up at a lot faster rate than the other.
Well, I mean, this is like a religious event.
It is.
This is like
this
Christmas.
Is religious.
I mean,
this is a church Obama could preach at and be okay, right?
Then it would be fine.
It'd be fine.
Well, no, they would find something wrong.
Well, that's probably true.
If Tarkenton had 5 reporters around him, now that number would be 5,000 reporters. Super Bowl I, Dan, number one, not only didn't sell out, NBC and CBS, which broadcasted, neither of them thought it was important even to make a tape. There is no tape that either of these networks have of Super Bowl I, other than some poor schmo who lives somewhere in the NHL, the NFL says, if you try to sell it, it's our copyright. You can't do that. And they won't buy it. That's the only tape of Super Bowl I. Did anybody, by the way, it was named after a Super Bowl. Do you know that? That's where the name came from. I mean,
well, you know what, and you know what's amazing about this is the game has gotten so big, and yet we've got these 2 strains. We've got the football. Super Bowl is a religion, which it is, bigger than ever. I'm sure the ratings will be huge again. It's a good matchup.
By the way, will there be more people in church on Sunday or watching the Super Bowl?
Super Bowl is church, so I'd say that church.
Let me throw this out there. What do you think the guys from Super Bowl I would think about Cam's fancy pants, $900 Versace? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about the game. Everyone can't seem to stop talking about Cam's fancy outfits and his style.
Well, first of all, can you imagine if Vince Lombardi saw his quarterback walk off the bus? Vince Lombardi, one of the 4 blocks of granite from Fordham University, almost a Jesuit. I mean, religious, the whole thing. Can you imagine what he would say if one of his players walked off in an outfit like that?
It is true, but then again, what about Joe Willie Namath? I mean, Joe Willie Namath was doing that times 10.
But Vince Lombardi wasn't his coach.
No, that's true. I mean, Joe Namath was, that's what's kind of funny about this, is he's showing up and Joe Willie, he basically started this whole thing, if you want to go back. This is not new. Fur coats,
the first guy with white shoes?
Commercials. Yeah, the whole bit.
Okay, real quick, guys. Panthers or Broncos? Dan, you're up first.
I'm gonna be the contrarian. I think if this is a close game in the fourth, so I'm already equivocating, that Denver can steal it. So you know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say Denver's defense is gonna surprise people. Manning's going to do just enough, and Denver's going to steal this ballgame.
Well, I hate going with favorites, but I'm laying
You
the
always
5.
go
well,
with
I'm
favorites.
sorry. I don't
You
know.
picked Trump, and it cost you in Iowa.
I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I'm very rarely wrong, as
That's
you
true.
know. But by the way, I'm very rarely right on my Super Bowl. I'm laying the 5.5 points taking Carolina.
Well, they're an attractive team. There's no question about it. I like the matchup.
I think they're tougher.
I think this is going to be fun.
On to the lightning round. First up, our recent snowfall, a big talker this week. Snow totals were the topic of debate, though, before the storm hit. Ron.
You know, you being from out of this is completely, you with your little radio show have thoroughly intimidated the weather broadcasters in the Twin Cities. Every single one of them.
They got it right.
No, you have absolutely
You think they were low?
They're afraid of you, Dan. You don't know the power you had. You've ruined it for all of us.
What are you talking
You're not
about?
even from here.
Well, listen, they needed to be chastened a little bit.
It's your fault.
When they're wrong and they say we weren't wrong, the snow came down from the sky, but it just didn't land on the stick on the ground. That's a little scary to me. They needed a little accountability.
But this time they underestimated because they were afraid of the things you've done to them.
Everyone's scared of Dan. Okay, next up, we have a 7-foot net coming to Target Field dugouts this season to comply with safety standards. Dan.
Well, this is kind of ironic here because I'll blame this on you.
On me?
Well, you're the problem. Your institution, your occupation. Because the real reason teams are doing this is not because they want to make it safer. It's they want to make it safer from blood-sucking attorneys like you who are going to take full advantage of this. That's why they're doing it. And now no one's going to be able to see the ball when Joe Mauer hits it to second base for a 4-6-3 double play.
How is it that for hundreds of years of baseball, we've not needed this net, and now all of a sudden the game has become so dangerous, we can't let anybody be in any situation where they possibly could be hurt. I think it's terrible. I hate it, by the way.
Well, look, a lot of people are used to the net behind the plate. I can't stand seeing the game through there.
I agree.
I wouldn't do it. I would not go. I would actually find another place to sit. I think it's ridiculous.
But you're right.
Okay, the clouds are out
today.
That's it.
We found the first case of what's being called mechanical doping. A pro cyclist caught with an electronic motor inside her bike. Not sure how you even do that. The elite taking it to the next level. Should we just throw out all the rules, Dan?
Well, probably, because they can't keep up with the cheaters anyway. I want to congratulate our guy, local celebrity, Greg LeMond, because he called the last scandal, and he called this one too. Last summer, he said, look, I'm hearing rumors about tiny little motors. We used to put one on when I was a kid called a vroom deal, but it didn't actually help you.
We just put baseball cards in the spokes.
It sounded cool, right? Yeah. But now they're going to motors, and LeMond predicted it. People mocked him. He's been vindicated again by a woman who apparently was caught cheating, and she claimed, by the way, not my bike.
Well, of course it wasn't her bike.
It was a friend's bike, and it got
planted
switched.
That. You know, it might have been. It could have been the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department that planted that.
Okay, we could get into a whole new thing with that. 2 flight attendants start throwing punches during a flight to Minneapolis. Delta Airlines giving passengers Sky Miles, travel vouchers. Ron, you equate Sky Miles to stickers?
Well, I mean, just imagine you're on the plane, okay? And the people that are supposed to keep you calm, there's a fist fight going with the flight attendants. So what do the airlines do? The airlines do what parents do when they want to reward their kids with something which is worth nothing, but the kids think it's worth a lot. They give them miles. Here you go, miles. Those miles are absolutely worthless. There's nothing that Delta has that's cheaper to give away than miles, and that's what they give them, having to see the horror. Hey, I actually would have paid to be on that flight. It might have been fun.
Speaking of airlines, you saw American Airlines, for the first time in 12 years, they're actually offering stale peanuts to people in the economy section.
Well,
12 years.
Yeah, and now the airlines fears are much more charitable than you give them credit for. They're buying gas, by the way, for like a nickel a gallon.
Last but not least,
their price.
Take a look at this sign, warning drivers of smartphone users. This is in Sweden. What have we become, Dan?
I don't even know that there's an editorial comment needed. I have a thing called SARS, self-absorption reflex syndrome. That sign is basically it. It's now your fault for not paying attention to some chumbalone who decides that I'm too busy to pay attention to the traffic patterns and to cross a crosswalk when I'm supposed to because I've got to text Ron Rosenbaum.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Well, we should have in downtown Minneapolis after midnight, sign be careful. A lot of the people are driving are drunk. I mean, what? Really, isn't it exactly
the same thing?
What are you supposed to do? There's people who are going to be crossing and driving into you. What is that sign all
Maybe
about?
we need those same signs, too, at ball yards to remind people, pay attention to the ball.
There's actually a bigger ball.